Welcome to this week's episode of overworkedadmin.com. This is our third lesson in our PowerShell series. And what we're going to be talking about a little bit this week is some of the things that we're going to be interacting with as we go through our PowerShell tutorial series. So two things that we need to know about is, they are processes and they are services. So when you look at something like, let's say, Task Manager, so if you just right-click on your toolbar down here, do Start Task Manager, you'll see that we've got a couple of different things, going on here. We've got processes, which can be listed. I'm running a bunch of Google Chrome instances, and I've got services. These are a bunch of services that I have on my machine, and we've got different applications. So, what are processes and services? Well, essentially, a system service is something that would be running that doesn't have a graphical user interface. So here you can see we have Bluetooth Device Managers, or BITS, which stands for the Background Intelligent Transfer Service. So this particular service would be running in the background in order to transmit data intelligently, slowly, so as not to use up bandwidth over our network. Maybe we have something like the Adobe Flash Player update, and maybe I don't want that service to run because, maybe Adobe isn't my favorite company. We could have the computer browser service or the cryptographic services. These are all things like your DHCP client that generally do not have a graphical user interface for you to interact with. And then we go over to processes, this JU sketch here. We can look at this and we can see like this is the Java updater. And we've got I've got an NVIDIA video card. So this is the little system tray icon down here. Maybe it's not down there. I probably have it turned off. But processes, what they are, is they are a running program essentially. So maybe I have Java that is running and just laying on my system. So we'll just give you an example. If I want to run a program called Putty, which is a SSH client, I will launch Putty, right? So Putty was just an application on my system, but as soon as I launch Putty, now that application is in memory, it's been turned into a process. So now we see we have putty.exe. So this is a really simple way to understand what processes are. Processes are running applications. Why is this important to us in the context of PowerShell? Well, there's a lot of things that PowerShell can do for you. And what we're going to be working towards throughout this tutorial is building a functional service monitoring script so that it will monitor our scripts for us, our services for us, and alert us if any of those services that we care about are down. So when we get into using PowerShell, let's talk about using them to monitor or get the information or status of our services or processes. So when you look at PowerShell, the syntax of a PowerShell command is very, very simple. It's noun space or dash verb. Verb space noun. Got that backwards. And so what we want to do is we want to do an action, which is, our verb, and then we want to do that action on something, which is our noun. So the action that we will use very frequently is get. And, right now I'm in the PowerShell ISE. You have a couple of options how you can run that. You can go to Start Windows and do PowerShell, and you can just launch it from there. And if you just type in the full PowerShell, you can either just launch the native PowerShell client or PowerShell ISE. But, so we've got here get, and if we're talking about processes, we want to get our process. So as you can see here, we get this nice little drop-down menu in the ISE. So what happens if we say get process? Well, it gives us a list of all of the running processes that we have on our system, including, see this down here, we launched Putty. And we can do the same thing, the same exact thing for services. So we're going to get service. And these are all the services that happen to be running on my system. And it'll give us the status, if they're stopped or started, the name, the display name, things of that nature. So that's really, that's good. We want to check on our services. But what if we want to terminate a service or stop a service or terminate a process. So let's go back to our process mindset, and we'll do get process, right? And so what was that putty process? Well, this putty process, you see if we look up here, this putty process has an ID, and this ID will be unique for all of the processes that we have. So notice that we have putty here, okay, and it is running right now. We have an ID of 8160. So I'm going to do stop process, and I believe that was 8160. Let me just double check here. Don't want to kill off any my screen recording software. So yep, 8160. So notice here the program is launched, and I'll just bring this over so you can watch it die here. 8160. And so we're going to say stop process 8160, and watch what happens to the putty window here. We killed the process. So this is a way that you can kind of, if you're familiar with Linux, it's very similar to the kill command. And the same thing, you could do, you could stop a service or start a service. In order to stop or start a service, though, you would need to be running this as the administrator, which we're not currently doing. Another really great thing about PowerShell is that you can get help. So if we do get help, right, it'll get help. So we can search for process. And look, this will tell us, if we do get help, all of the commands that we have available that have the word process in them. So really kind of a neat feature. I personally like this method of getting help much better than how the Linux command shell gives you a help. So this is just a really brief overview. Just so you know, and so you can do this, as we start to write our own script, you're going to have to do something called setting your execution policy, because next week we're going to start writing scripts. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do, we want to just know, we want to get help, and we want to do execution. Let's just do get help for execution. So we can say execution policy. This is what we want to change. So let's do get execution policy, and see here it says remote signed. This means that only very trusted scripts that are signed by their author will be able to run on your system. That is very good for security. However, if you want to be able to run your own scripts, you're going to have to use verb set, and we have here execution policy, and we're going to do unrestricted. Okay. See, and notice that we're getting a warning here, and we're going to select yes because we're going to be writing our own PowerShell scripts. We're going to say yes. And so now, after we've set this set execution policy unrestricted, PowerShell will, without any warnings or errors, run the scripts that we've written. So I hope this gives you a really good introductory overview to PowerShell now that we're actually starting to work with it and we're seeing some of the tidbits that we're going to be manipulating. Go over to the overworkedadmin.com website, look up Lesson 3, and we've got the homework and we've got the answers to the homework there. So it's really important that you follow along and you make sure that you're absorbing this knowledge. Those are posted. So head over to overworkedadmin.com, and thank you for joining me this week. Bye.